I don't know who returned from space, but they aren't the NASA astronauts we sent. You may think you know this space agency, but you don't. NASA is not the sum of its publicly presented parts. I'm not simply talking about classified research and development. I'm talking about the dozens of space programs veiled from prying eyes. Programs hidden even from many folk within the company. And when I was finally offered the privilege of peering behind the curtain, I found myself at the eye of an unprecedented storm. A disaster beyond the bounds of earthly horror. The GE-1 mission. Since the climax of the space race, a consensus has grown. A prevailing belief that NASA has abandoned the final frontier. It is, however, an absurd notion that the brightest minds of this agency no longer care about space's mysteries. The truth is that our best scientists decided, decades ago, to shield humanity from the hellish things we uncovered. Things lying in the pits of space that no light reaches. NASA projects featured in the media have low stakes. Even the International Space Station sits at the foot of this organisation's priorities. Significant expeditions are classified. The ones intended to catapult humanity towards the stars, for instance. The ones using spacecraft beyond what the average person deems possible with man-made technology. We are capable of things that would leave you awestruck. We are capable of things that would leave you cold. The GE-1 spacecraft launched on Wednesday the 25th of January, 2023. It sailed beyond our solar system, pursuing a slow signal that was coursing through the outer reaches of the Milky Way. Not an intelligible transmission, but a frequency that intrigued us nonetheless. A frequency that Dr. Parker named 784A. Hysteria swept the company on the date of the signal's first interception, Saturday the 29th of October, 2022. Given 784A's ever-moving source, the frequency sparked feverish intrigue. Regarding the nature of the mysterious moving signal, there seemed to be a different hypothesis from every NASA employee with clearance. It was, truly, an exhilarating time. And things reached fever pitch when the GE-1 craft launched a few months later. Employees were barely eating or sleeping. We spent our waking hours sharing ideas about the mysterious transmission from space. A circuit board of explanations that finally overloaded on Thursday the 2nd of February, 2023. The day on which the GE-1 stopped responding to NASA. 1 week later, on Thursday the 9th of February, the signal from the spacecraft returned. "Commander Irwin, this is Mission Control," Dr. Parker, the head of the project, announced. "Mission Control to GE-1. Do you copy?" "Roger, Mission Control," Commander Tim Irwin responded. "We've been trying to reach you." "Roger, Commander. We lost contact with GE-1 7 days ago. What happened? What is your status?" Dr. Parker asked. "All systems are fine, Mission Control," Irwin replied. Dr. Parker seemed flustered by the commander's nonchalant demeanour. The project leader clawed at his grey, thinning hair with tense fingers. The old man seemed to be carefully contemplating what he would say next. 7 days without contact, Commander. 7. GE-1 disappeared at our end. Do you have a status report? Anything which might explain why we were unable to communicate with one another? Parker asked. "Nothing, Mission Control," Irwin blankly replied. We reached the transmission point of the signal. There was nothing to be found. We have collected as much data as possible, requesting clearance to return home.
They've got to know that you need it. Yeah, but no, it's over now. It's over. No, God.
There were several minutes of nervous mumbling from various scientists and board members in the control room. Dr. Parker eventually leaned forwards, heavy breath beating against the microphone. He was trembling with a mixture of rage and confusion. "Roger, Commander Irwin. You have clearance to return home," Parker croakily whispered. On a vessel traversing space at an unfathomable pace, the astronauts came back to Earth. The craft silently landed at an unofficial NASA site on Wednesday the 15th of February, 2023. The GE-1 crew emerged, and the 3 dazed scientists were greeted by a small, applauding crowd. Commander Tim Irwin, Dr. Gianna Danes, and Dr. Matthias Olsen. Those were the 3 astronauts who supposedly stepped out of the spacecraft. And, at first, we had no reason to believe anything else. We recognized the 3 faces, the 3 voices, the 3 brilliant minds. However, it did not take long for people to notice slight oddities. Things that almost slipped through the cracks. I overheard something perplexing whilst Tim Irwin spoke to his wife, Melissa Irwin, in the break room. "I love you, Melody," the astronaut said blankly. Melissa frowned, though she still managed to smile, awkwardly. "Melody? Okay. Who on earth is Melody, eh? Who is she?" I didn't intend to eavesdrop. I'd been helping myself to a drink. Still, I slowed down when I heard that. It was an odd mistake. Melissa was clearly teasing her exhausted husband, of course, but there was a slight tinge of uncertainty in her voice. I'll admit that I was a little too nosy. I pretended to weigh up 2 different drinks so I could loiter in the room for a little longer. As a result, whilst I was leaving, I managed to catch the tail end of the commander's strange behaviour. Irwin cleared his throat. I'm sorry, honey, I forgot my wife's name?" Melissa laughed, finishing her husband's sentence. "I didn't realise I had to worry about you finding another woman in space." No, I'm just joking. It's Melissa, by the way, just to let you know. "I know your name," Tim icily sliced. I froze, halfway out of the door, as Melissa replied with a timid voice. Yeah, sorry, sweetie. I know. I told you I was only joking," she assured. "Look, I understand. Obviously I understand, Tim. Your head must be all over the place. You look like you need a good rest." I laughed to myself once I was out of earshot. But I felt the same as Melissa. Something was slightly uneven about Tim's disposition. The mistake didn't come from a sleep-deprived brain. I knew that, and she knew that. The commander's voice changed when his wife confronted him. It didn't sound like the astronaut any longer. Admittedly, I didn't know Tim incredibly well, but I knew that he was different. Whatever the case, I'm sure I would have forgotten about the entire thing. I would have dismissed my gut feeling as the result of a nerve-wracking week or 2. Everybody had been unsettled since GE-1 lost its signal. We were still recovering from the trauma of those awful 7 days, without any communication between mission control and the spacecraft. There is one other thing worth mentioning. One of my co-workers claimed to find Gianna Danes standing alone in a corridor, staring at a bathroom door. Not entering. Not moving. Sleep deprivation, I thought again. That's what's happening. They're all tired. 1 year later, however, that explanation no longer sufficed. On Wednesday the 31st of January, 2024, an unidentified object entered Earth's atmosphere, tumbling into the Pacific Ocean. A catastrophe that was only brought to NASA's attention because the object in question utilised advanced cloaking technology, though it did not broadcast a signal. It was a government satellite that detected the craft, and when scientists notified NASA that they had detected technology used by dozen miners, our primary government contractor, we immediately sent a recovery team to the ocean site. That was as much as I knew until Dr. Parker knocked on my door. I'd appreciate your input, the man said. Pardon? I replied, fearing, for a moment, that I'd have to join the exploration team. Why do you need me? You are one of only 24 people who are involved with the GE1 project, Parker explained, as if that were enough information. I don't understand. That project ended a year ago, I said. Dr. Parker's brow furrowed. Please come with me, Dr. Odell. After following the man to the control room, I learnt something which my brain, usually eager to embrace the unknown, wanted so desperately to unlearn. On the ocean floor, thousands of feet below the water's surface, NASA found the GE1 spacecraft. What? I gasped. We still don't know, Dr. Parker replied. I need your help. Why? I weakly asked. I don't understand any of this. The GE1 landed last year. It's currently sitting in a warehouse, isn't it? Yes, Dr. Parker nodded. But it's also sitting at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean, 3,000 miles off the east coast. My face whitened, and the man nodded, as if reading my thoughts. Take some time to process that. I'm still working on wrapping my head around it. After a minute or so, I finally summoned a question that I didn't find utterly foolish or uneducated. So, let me just check that I understand. It's the exact same spacecraft, identical in every way to the GE1 which landed last year, I asked. The project leader sighed. Well, yes, and no. I just want to know. I just want to know what you want from me. Why am I here, Dr. Parker? I asked. The recovery team has not explored the craft yet, the man replied. But they have conducted a preliminary exploration with an unmanned vessel called UV-7. It detected movement within the GE1 craft. What the? I started. Parker nodded, then continued. Yes, it is deeply unsettling, and none of us understand. And the room, as you might be able to see, is divided. Hence the passionate debate taking place. Some specialists think a living organism might be down there, but others think it might have been a dislodged piece of equipment underwater. After all, the UV-7 didn't transmit any biological information. So I suppose that brings us to your main question. Why are you here? Well, you're one of this organisation's leading biologists. Is that fair to say, Dr. Odell? I scoffed. Well, I specialise in cell and molecular biology. Don't you want a marine biologist, or... I'm sorry, I still don't understand. What is this? What have we even found here? Nothing, Parker said. That's my verdict, but Dr. Long disagrees. I mentioned your name to everybody in the room, and I'm hoping you'll help me. How? I asked. By proving what the UV7 has already told us, the man answered. Whatever moved down there, it wasn't living. It wasn't organic in nature, unless a fish happened to... No, it couldn't have been. It just... As I said, the UV7 would have detected a biological signal. So, I want you to tell all of them that there's nothing organic down there, Dr. Odell. Will you help me? Will you lend a keen eye? A keen mind? I agreed to offer my opinion. I shouldn't have done so, but I did. It would have been easy to ask Dr. Parker to choose someone else. Give someone else clearance. I wasn't exactly emotionally invested in the GE1 program. It had been a year since the astronauts supposedly returned, and we'd found nothing at the source of the 784A frequency. Since then, I'd moved on to bigger and better things. Of course, everything changed when Parker revealed that an identical version of the GE1 spacecraft existed at the bottom of the ocean. It was something far more bewildering than anything I'd experienced during 13 years at NASA. I didn't have the discipline to turn around, to leave it all behind. I needed an answer to the unknown. 2 hours later, with no more than 20 people in the control room, we watched live footage of the submarine's dive towards the GE1 crash site. The mission was a joint venture between NASA and a privately contracted company, with all participating crew members legally bound to an NDA. After all, they were about to explore a spacecraft which, in the public realm, did not exist. After the initial flurry of breathtaking aquatic species, it took another 2 torturous hours for the video feed to display anything other than blackness. The vessel descended into the depths of the ocean, the part untouched by sunlight. I thought about the similarities between that place and space. It seems ridiculous to me that we have ignored a frontier on our own planet before exploring the one beyond it. So much of the ocean remains uncharted. Eventually, the contractors found the wreckage, and 2 divers, each fitted with a camera, left the submarine to explore the vessel. When they rounded the battered nose of the spacecraft, Mission Control fell silent. We all saw it at the same time. The bold letters printed on the crumpled wreckage of the sunken craft, which was half buried in the black seabed. GE1. Hearing about the discovery was one thing. Seeing it on a gargantuan screen was something else. Dr. Parker was no liar. I'd already known that, of course, but I still didn't believe him until I saw the footage for myself. An identical version of a NASA spaceship that was thousands of miles away. "Breaching the airlock now," the lead diver, Barton, announced. Disturbed water swirled into a stream of bubbles, clouding the lens of Barton's camera as he used a piece of specialised drilling equipment. It was a long and arduous process, during which Mission Control only had a limited view of the spectacle through the camera of Lee, the second diver. "That'll do it," Barton's colleague said. The bubbles started to disperse as the drill ceased, and we watched the 2 explorers break the airlock's mechanism before pulling the hatch towards them. They revealed a void within the opening, and the lights on their headsets did very little to illuminate the innards of the craft. I sensed that the 2 men were apprehensive about entering the wreckage. They likely knew very little about NASA's GE-1 program. That, in the end, was for the best. I still long for that privilege. I wish to unlearn all of this.
Entering the vehicle,
Barton uneasily said. The lead diver swam through the opening, and he was followed a couple of seconds later by Lee, who may well have been on the verge of turning and retreating to the submarine. The split screen revealed two pieces of footage. Two camera feeds, barely different in perspective. Two views of the same bleak, water-filled tunnel. The entrance to a vessel that had once traversed space, only to meet its end in a watery grave.
Are we broadcasting clear footage?
Lee asked. Yes, Dr. Parker responded. If you follow the main hallway, you'll reach GE-1's flight deck.
Okay. I'm not seeing any obstructions so far,
Barton said.
Should be manageable.
The pair continued to swim through the hallway of the craft, which, as Barton had noted, was remarkably intact. We'd expected to find carnage and chaos, but there was none of that. Then again, we shouldn't have been surprised. There were few tears in the exterior of the craft. Given the level of investment placed into developing a vessel far beyond mankind's perceived capabilities, it seemed plausible that the craft had mostly survived both the dangerous re-entry and a high-speed collision with the water. What did not seem plausible, on the other hand, was Parker's explanation that we were looking at a carbon copy of an existing spacecraft, one which I'd seen land on Earth a year earlier. I had no reason to believe that everybody in the room must be lying to me, yet something in my brain refused to compute this impossibility. Of course, I realised that I wouldn't have ever believed Dr. Parker, even if I'd gone to the hangar and physically seen the craft in person, even if I'd decided to swim to the bottom of the ocean to view its twin. After everything I've seen, I still try not to believe any of it.
Oh my,
Barton began. It only took a second for the camera to reveal what the diver had spotted. When I saw the hellish scene that had sparked such a haunted response, I unleashed a similar yelp of terror. We all recoiled fearfully, in fact. I suppose none of us had hypothesized what we might find in the wreckage, even when the debate about movement and biological signatures had been raging. This was not like those early days of the GE-1 project. People had not been excitably sharing ideas. I suppose, deep down, we had all feared we would find something like that. Nobody was exuberant to find 3 floating spacesuits at the front of the spacecraft. Spacesuits that were, surprisingly, intact. Spacesuits that were not empty. It had taken roughly a day since the GE-1 crash for the rescue team to reach, then breach the vessel. 24 hours for the bodies to decompose underwater. The skin of each astronaut was discoloured and wounded with haunting razor-thin gashes, but their gaunt faces were unmistakable. Well, 2 of them were unmistakable. The corpse of Commander Tim Irwin was not like the other 2. Each astronaut met a gruesome end, but the commander's corpse was left in the worst condition. The upper half of his helmet and the head within had been cleanly severed above his gaping mouth. That explained the rotten nature of his head's remaining lower half, in comparison to Diane's and Olsen, who were each encased in a suit without oxygen. The ship's air would have lasted a month or so. The mission was never supposed to be this long. During that time, Irwin's severed head had partially decayed, and it was exposed by the savagely sawn helmet. The lower half of his face bore holes in the cheeks, revealing teeth behind. One scientist murmured that the 3 astronauts may have died long before impact. Within a sealed spacesuit, lacking oxygen, the decomposition process would have been slowed. Of course, this discovery had raised many terrifying questions. One, in particular, played on my mind. Why were the astronauts wearing suits inside the spacecraft? A technical engineer gave a probable explanation for the ship's return. The GE-1 was programmed with a homing initiative. In the event of life loss, or 24 hours without manual piloting, the craft's motherboard was programmed to assume automatic control of GE-1 and steer it back to Earth. The re-entry might have failed because the ship was damaged, the engineer said. That might also explain why we didn't receive a signal from its transmitter. Honestly, it's a miracle that the GE-1 made it back to Earth at all. Yeah. Well, we'll know more when we look at the ship's log, another engineer added. Dr. Parker sighed. Barton, we need you to... We have to get out of here, Lee whimpered, shouting over Dr. Parker. I didn't sign up for this, okay? Look, we've done the dive. It's over. You've seen what you needed to see. I understand that this is a terrible situation, Mr. Lee, Parker continued. You were, however, briefed before the dive. Is that correct? You signed a contract, didn't you? The nature of the expedition was made clear, and it isn't over. We don't have all of the information that we need. We want to recover as much of the ship's data as possible. Do you have the drive, Mr. Barton? Let me check. Yes, it's here, Barton murmured, dazed by the floating corpses. Right, Parker replied. You should see the socket on the right-hand side of the control panel. Do you? The lead diver swam towards the main console, searching anxiously for the socket, with the navigational assistance of every expert in the room. When he finally inserted the drive, a red light flickered on the panel. What does that mean? Barton asked. Oh, for crying out. You were right, Ian, one of the technical engineers groaned to his colleague. It's not good, Mr. Barton, it's not good. It means that some of the ship's log files are corrupted. All of them? Dr. Parker asked. The engineer rubbed his chin. Well, if there'd been no light at all, this would have been a lost cause. So there's still hope. It'll be the water damage, obviously. No doubt about that. Just leave the drive in the socket, Mr. Barton. Let it run, let it do its thing. When the light turns off, that means the data transfer has finished. Whilst this was happening, Lee scanned the ship with equipment for detecting organic matter. I was standing by, waiting for the diver's device to detect some sign of life. Something that would warrant me being in the room. But there was nothing. Not even any sign of the movement that the UV-7 had detected. I was useless. The uncomfortable biologist standing in the corner. I was only there, it seemed, to endure the horror alongside everyone else. Something that did intrigue Mission Control, however, was Lee's discovery of floating glass shards in Danes' laboratory. Most people wouldn't pay attention to suspended glass fragments in an underwater wreckage. The diver certainly didn't understand the commotion from the scientists, and neither did I. Dr. Parker instructed the diver to collect samples, and Lee did as he was told. He scooped up some of the shards, and I raised an eyebrow. Why are they so interested? It's just broken glass, I naively thought, frowning. 10 minutes later, when the data transfer completed, Barton recovered the drive, and the two divers were beyond happy to receive the go-ahead from Dr. Parker to leave the site. The men swam back to the submarine, the transmission ended, and everybody in the control room dispersed. I didn't sleep that night, of course. No sane person would manage a good night's sleep after such an awful discovery. When I went into work that morning, I hadn't expected to see video footage of 3 dead astronauts. 3 people who died in disturbing ways. More horrifying than that, I hadn't expected to see footage of 3 corpses who had already returned to Earth, alive and well. The following day, I was sitting in my office, boring into the wall with a 1,000-yard stare. "Earl?" Dr. Parker half barked. It took the project leader 3 attempts to catch my attention. Using my first name had triggered something in my brain, taken me out of myself for a moment, reminded me that this was all real. No matter how hard I tried to dissociate and detach myself, I was excruciatingly intertwined with the horror. "Dr. Parker," I replied, unable to say anything else. "I'm afraid I have to ask you, once again, to come with me," the man said, seeming far paler than usual. "We just reviewed the data from the GE1 wreckage." "What did you find?" I whispered, voice breaking. Parker sighed. "If you come to my office, Dr. Rodel, you'll see. I really need your opinion." That seemed like a lie to me. Dr. Parker had been talking about the importance of my opinion as a biologist since the start of the GE1 program. In the end, I'd simply been a limp, lifeless limb. Hardly even a backup appendage. Just some excess fat that somebody had forgotten to trim. As it would transpire, however, Dr. Parker had finally found something that required my input. Out of 102 audio files on the drive, only 2 were uncorrupted. 2 recordings from Commander Tim Irwin. Within those recordings, Dr. Parker heard something he didn't understand. Heard many things he didn't understand. Unfortunately, I would scarcely understand the recordings either. What little did make sense, however, terrified me. And I saw that coming. I knew that, whatever those files contained, listening would change me. That terrible truth was foreshadowed by the project leader, by his haunted eyes. The board need to know whether they've found something alien in nature, Dr. Odell. I'm not so certain. I still don't think... I believe... Well, I don't know what I believe. It's not organic. It doesn't make sense that it would be organic. Of course, they're not listening to me anymore, Dr. Parker said. But they'll listen to you, Earl. I could tell that the man no longer believed his own words, so he wanted me to give him a reason to believe. Audio file 86. This is Commander Tim Irwin. I am recording this message at 14:40 on Thursday the 2nd of February, 2023, Greenwich Mean Time. Since 12:15 today, we have been unable to contact Mission Control. Olsen has not pinpointed a malfunction, so we hope that all remains well back home. The 3 of us are contemplating the possibility that the issue with our broadcasting signal stems from what we have discovered. The source of the 784A frequency. We found it. And given what we have experienced over the past 2 hours, I believe it to be vital for me to record our findings, in the absence of any communication with Dr. Parker. At roughly 12:35, shortly after losing contact with Mission Control, we finally saw a physical manifestation of the frequency that we've been hunting for 8 days. We were starting to think that there would be nothing to find. We'd been eyeing blackness for hours, trying to accept that the transmission might have no visible broadcasting point. It was when we neared a mile or less from the signal's source that we finally saw something tangible. I'm still struggling to describe our discovery. It's at first we didn't know how to put it into words. Now, however, I suppose I'd say that we were pursuing an ever-moving belt of glass shards. Yes, glass shards. You heard me correctly. Thousands of small, glass-like fragments hurtling through the cosmos. Jagged pieces of some unknown material. No sign of biological life. No sign of foreign technology. Just a near-transparent substance, with no mechanical nature, no organic nature. A material somehow transmitting the 784A frequency. Now, that revelation might disappoint some people back home, those hoping for signs of alien life. Still, I know that Dr. Parker and other minds behind this mission will be extremely fascinated by this discovery. It's not my field of expertise, but I'm just a pilot, but this is incredible. Anyway, at 12:55, after a brief preparation period, we used the B-1 craft to retrieve a sample of glass from the moving belt. I understand that, though we were cleared to use the equipment without approval, Dr. Parker may be a little disheartened. I know he wanted to experience this with us. I know he wanted to live vicariously through a camera feed or an audio feed at the very least. I just hope he'll understand. We didn't want to wait for the line of communication to reopen. After all, we didn't know whether we'd have another opportunity to collect samples. We had no way of knowing how the mysterious belt of glass would react to our presence, after all, even though G1 still wasn't picking up organic signatures. Diane's, however, keeps talking about the possibility of something sentient lurking in the shards. I'm not so sure. If we detect something organic, I will take that idea more seriously. We may have to change our approach. This is uncharted territory, and we're all alone out here. The belt was, and still is, moving at a rather glacial pace of, roughly 6,000 miles per hour. We will have no trouble pursuing it in the GE-1. As I speak, we are trundling alongside the glass stream at a crawl. The belt stretches for hundreds of miles. Who knows how many shards are contained within it? With regards to recovering glass pieces from the belt, we succeeded, but the B-1 craft suffered catastrophic damage. Of course, that intrigued us. No form of glass on Earth would be powerful enough, even at that speed, to tear through the B-1's reinforced hull. That only confirmed what we already knew. This isn't glass. It isn't anything we understand. Diane's is... she's stumped. Anyway, upon realizing that, we knew we couldn't bring the B-1 back without retrieving a sample first, regardless of the damage. So, I hope I don't end up with a sizable bill for this one. The small craft only managed to collect a meagre handful of passing shards, but that was enough. We didn't want to push our luck. So we brought B1 back within a matter of minutes. I'll send over the data logs as soon as the line of communication has been fixed. When I do, you'll see exactly what I mean. The miniature vessel was almost obliterated by the belt. Obliterated by tiny pieces of glass. We had to be quick. We didn't want to lose an opportunity to claim at least something. At 13:20, Dr. Gianna Dines examined the 7 shards recovered by the B1 craft in her laboratory. She instructed Olsen and I to wear protective gear before joining her, as she had no idea exactly what she'd found. We giddily watched Diana conduct her tests. She was giddy too, in all honesty, though she attempted to maintain some semblance of professionalism, some semblance of composure. I saw right through it. We're aware that whatever we've retrieved is unlike anything humanity has seen before. Dr. Dines confirmed, around 1420, what we'd seen in GE1's data. The shards do not contain organic matter. Each piece is composed of a raw material not present on Earth or any other planet we've ever explored. Yes, it's a groundbreaking discovery. I don't know what else to say. I suppose I should mention that shortly before I started this recording, Olsen became a little jittery. He told Dinas and me that he saw one of the shards enlarge, or at least move in some form. It was likely a trick of the lighting. Dinas took him seriously, but she found no evidence of any change in the material. I suggested that, moving forwards, we set up cameras to record the laboratory, record the shards. Dinas and Olsen agreed. So, we've set those up. The cameras will ensure that we don't miss anything important. I'll send everything to Mission Control as soon as Olsen has figured out how to fix the transmitter, though he assures me that it remains unbroken. Bizarre. Anyway, interference from the 784A frequency seems to be the most likely explanation. But we are still unsure, of course. I will continue to log daily updates. For now, the 3 of us need to get some rest. It's been a historic day, but we are shattered. None of us have slept in maybe 30 hours or so, I don't know. We had to stay awake. None of us wanted to miss the first sighting of the shards. Anyway, this is Commander Tim Irwin, audio file 86, terminating recording at 14:50.
I need you to brace yourself, Dr. Parker said. I snapped back into reality, having been fully immersed in the wonder of the crew's discovery, much like Commander Irwin. I'd almost forgotten the gravity of the situation, forgotten the terror that NASA had found at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. Brace myself for what? The next audio file? I asked. Dr. Parker nodded. Yes. We just listened to 86. The only other uncorrupted recording is 99. Right, so we're missing 12 files in between those two, I asked. Yes, the man answered, and 3 files after 99. The board doesn't care about the first 85 corrupted files. Those ones were all recorded before we lost contact with GE1. Meaningless updates that would likely mirror whatever Commander Irwin was telling Mission Control on a daily basis. However, the audio recordings from 86 to 102 detail whatever happened after the vessel went dark. Those are the most valuable pieces of data this organisation currently owns, and we've only recovered 2 files. Right. Is file 99 useful? I asked. The doctor's lip quivered as he hovered his unsteady index finger over the mouse, seemingly considering whether to inflict such horror upon me. I wish he hadn't. Useful? That's an interesting word, Dr. Odell. I don't know. I just don't know. It tells one horrifying part of a story we simply don't understand, Parker croaked before clicking. File 99.
This is Irwin. 99. File 99. Let's see. Since the last few recordings, things have. It's all over. It's all over. The situation was already terrible. This must be my 5th recording today. I don't know. I'm losing track. I'm sorry. Sorry for the backlog of files. For you to. Who cares? Why am I apologising to anyone? Nobody's there. Nobody will ever be there. I'll be lost. I'll be lost to space. And then... No. Somebody will hear it. Somebody will hear all of these recordings. There's the protocol, after all. The return protocol. I'm no engineer, but I remember Olsen talking about it. If GE1 makes it back to Earth, I hope these recordings make sense to you, whoever's listening. None of this makes sense to me. And it's even worse now Dionysus is gone. She died at, I don't know, 2210, perhaps. It's Tuesday the 7th of February. I'm the only surviving member of the GE1 crew. You know how it happened. You don't need me to repeat it. I just want the family of Dr. Dionysus to know that I tried to save her. This all started with a reckless endeavour. We should have waited to hear from Mission Control. We should have turned around when we saw the vessel outside the window. I'm looking at it now. It's still there. GE1. An identical version of our spacecraft, eyeballing me from the belt, impervious to the racing current of glass. We're both following the moving shards. It keeps changing its speed. The belt, I mean. It feels like it might even be changing its direction. I don't know, No, you know what? I'd like to amend my statement. We should have turned around as soon as we lost contact with Mission Control. That was the warning. This was written on the wall. Everything about the belt was wrong. We knew it, but
We were drooling from our mouths like apes. We tried to save ourselves. Olsen's idea was smart. It was smart. It just wasn't enough. We should have remembered B1. Remembered how the glass tore through that unmanned craft. Olsen promised, however, that this would be different. The belt was moving so quickly after all. He said that the shards weren't as dangerous outside of the belt. They were stationary. I wanted to believe that hypothesis. Maybe I still want to believe it. After all, I've not stopped wearing my suit, even though I know it didn't save. It didn't save Olsen. It didn't save Dianus either. I spent most of the day trying to stop the bleeding, but it was awful. You heard it. You don't need me to tell you. Oh, I still hear her words ringing in my ears. The things she described. The way it cut into her skin. And then it disappeared. The glass disappeared after hacking her face to pieces. It was so methodical and quick. So eerily quick. But not in a merciful way. Her dying scream will never leave my mind. Neither will the sight of that sharp shard, unbound by the laws of physics, slicing her face with clean, swift motions. A weapon wielded by an unseen force. I've locked the lab. That won't be enough, will it? It wasn't enough to stop. Oh, there it goes. There. Did you hear it? That's why I wanted to record this. I keep seeing something in the copied version of the GE-1 spacecraft, gliding 100 yards away from the real one. I keep seeing movement behind the windows. Oh, no. No. I see them. I see them so clearly. No, but they're dead. Olsen and Dianus are dead. Their bodies are still sitting in the control room. I'm looking at them right now. But I'm also... They're across the way, surveying me from the flight deck of the copied GE-1 spacecraft. How? What is happening? It copied them. It made copied versions of Olsen and Dianus. I don't. They won't stop looking at me. They won't stop. I want to turn around. I want to stop following the belt. Following the cloned version of the ship. I've wanted to abandon the mission for days, but Dianus made a good point. After Olsen passed, she said that we shouldn't head back with the shards on board. She said it would be too dangerous to bring those things home. I said we should get rid of the glass, but we were too frightened to go near it after he died. Without Diane's, I don't see myself solving this. I don't see myself doing anything other than soldiering onwards, continuing to track everything I see and hear, continuing to move, to follow the belt. I'll record an update tomorrow, but I promise I won't abandon this mission. Not until I talk to somebody from Mission Control. Whatever material we found, I won't come home unless I get rid of it. So Wait, do you hear that? That's what I keep hearing. And it's what we heard before. When the glass moved. Changed into something. I don't know. It looked like liquid. When it took Dianus, I saw it. It was like a thin trail of water with a slight sheen. It washed over the walls, and then it climbed Dianus' suit before slithering beneath the visor. I don't know how it entered. And then it started solidifying. She was running around, screaming, wrestling with her own helmet. Wait, give me a second. I need to check the lab. Okay. Yes, there are fewer pieces of glass. That's the other thing I wanted to say. 4 pieces remain. Only 4 shards. We collected 7 from the belt. Yes, there were definitely 7. Then 6, after the mirrored version of the GE-1 craft appeared outside the window. 5, after we found Olsen's body in the airlock. 4, after it took Dianus. Yes, there were 4 after Dianus died, at 22:10. It's currently 22:43 and I only see 3 shards in the laboratory. Only 3 shards are sitting on her desk. But the door's locked. There's no sign of exit. Where did the 4th shard go? I don't know how much longer I'll be able to wait. I want to come home more than anything. See Melissa. See the little ones. It would be a selfish act. It wouldn't be right to let them live on an Earth with the risk of these things. Stop looking at me! Stop looking at me! Stop it! Both of you! What are you? You're not them. They're dead. I'm sorry. It would have been better not to know, wouldn't it? It would have been better not to know. Commander Tim Irwin. Audio file 99. Terminating recording at 22:45. After the audio ended, Dr. Parker and I sat quietly. Not silently. I could hear my own heartbeat in the quaking canals of my ears. I could hear the Project Leaper hyperventilating. Failing to hide a fearful murmur that sounded at the back of his throat. He'd already heard the 2 files. I had no idea how he'd managed to maintain a professional demeanour. The man knew what was coming. He knew what I was about to hear. But he said nothing, did nothing. I resented him for that, even though I'd chosen to listen. I was crumbling from the haunting revelations in the last surviving recording of Commander Irwin. "Think about what we saw," the man eventually whispered. I looked at him without uttering a word, giving the scientist time to continue. "Think about the body of Tim Irwin," Parker said. "What remained of it, I mean. Odell, I need, more than anything in the world, to hear File 102, the Commander's final recording on Friday the 17th of February, 2023. "That was after the GE-1 landed," I said. The man shuddered. "We didn't see the GE-1 land, Dr. Odell. You know that now." I know. "I'm thinking about the shards recovered from the wreckage in the ocean. What happened to those?" I asked, gripped by a fresh wave of terror. Dr. Parker lowered his head. Scientists are examining the fragments. Dr. Zealand's team. Well, now you've listened to the audio recording, I'd actually like you to meet him. He might be able to lend your expertise in his laboratory." "Okay," I sighed. "I've remembered something else. The video footage from the dive. Do you remember seeing the glass in GE-1's laboratory?" "I've hardly thought of anything else," Parker replied. Commander Irwin said, in the final uncorrupted recording, that only 3 shards remained on board. "But there were more than 3 shards in that water," I quivered. Parker frowned. I don't know what to say to that, Earl. I don't know. The shards could have shattered during the crash, perhaps. Split into numerous smaller fragments. Right? I wasn't convinced by that. Not after hearing the description the commander had given. These were sturdy, unnatural things. Things which could change shape and state. Not things that would easily shatter. If they could shatter at all. "Anyway, Dr. Odell," the scientist said, clearing his throat. "Before we go to Dr. Zealand's lab, I'd like to ask for your opinion. GE-1 found no evidence of organic matter in the belt. Dr. Dynas found no evidence of organic matter in the shard samples. Given the commander's description in File 99, however, do you think that the ship's data log may have been wrong? Do you think Dr. Dynas may have been wrong?" I gulped. There isn't enough evidence for me to give a definite answer to that question. Not until I see the shards for myself. I regretted saying that. I didn't want to see the shards. I wanted to run away, wash my hands of the whole thing. File 99 had filled me with a bottomless dread that I didn't realise the human body was capable of experiencing. It haunted me. The thought of an unfeeling thing stealing one's form and then shredding that same person to pieces. The commander was right. The substance needed to stay in space. Unfortunately, some of it is already here. "You're too late," Dr. Zealand said. That line snapped my mind into action. I'd been trying to process the horror of the past few days. However, it was nearly impossible to process something far beyond our world. Something the human mind has not evolved to process. Dr. Parker scoffed. "What do you mean too late? Dr. Odell needs to—" "Dr. Odell is too late," Zealand interrupted. "We disposed of the shards this morning." "I beg your pardon?" I asked. "The fragments were dangerous. The audio recordings made that abundantly clear. Dr. Long ordered us to destroy the samples, Dr. Zealand said. At that moment, Veronica Riding emerged from the lab, which was being half barricaded by Dr. Zealand's hulking form. The sheepish woman was pushing a trolley of black waste bags, and she seemed to be trying to avoid detection. Regardless, hope sparked in my mind when I saw her. Veronica was a close friend of mine, not just a colleague. I hoped she would clear up the strangeness of the situation. The idea of NASA discarding such an important historical find seemed unthinkable to me. It was a lovely thought, there's no denying that. I wanted to entertain the possibility of the agency putting mankind's safety before mankind's progression, but I'm not a moron.
Veronica,
I called.
Is it true? Did you get rid of it?
What was that, Dr. Odell? She asked, stopping to face me. My body temperature lowered. As I eyed the face of my dear friend, I felt the shift. I didn't see a physical difference in Veronica's appearance, as such. The shift in my fractured mind was more subtle than that. It was a feeling that whisked the contents of my gut. Veronica always called me Earl.